whoever you are, wherever you are, hope you are blessed and doing safe. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings, family. Of course, I'm tuning in. You see me without the glasses off today, but if you're looking for some opportunities, particular advertisement opportunities, then look no further at the link at the bottom to my email address. You can hit me up for advertisement opportunities. We are supporting and promoting your businesses here on this channel. You can also, if you would like to donate and subscribe to our Patreon, a link is at the bottom as well. So you have multiple ways in which you can advertise with the platform by emailing me when we go on through our live stream. You also have access to premium content, those that want to see premium content that you will not find here on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, as I am suspended probably by now. You guys can check out the Patreon at link at the bottom. But advertisement opportunities, definitely email me, gavin.grich1@gmail.com for rates. And for the Patreon, it is the same as the YouTube channel. It is channel gboot2786. All right, I'll holla. Peace.
Hi, I'm attorney Gavin and Richard. Check out my latest book, The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby Jr., The Destruction of Due Process in America. For approximately 2 years now, I have gone on a painstaking quest to investigate the rise and fall of an American icon, Bill Cosby. In the mid-1980s, there was not a star that was higher than Cosby. Advertisements with Coca-Cola, Jell-O, Kodak, along with the #1 television show for 5 straight years in a row. On Thursday nights, it was must-see TV on NBC. Cosby resurrected the genre of the traditional family sitcom that was once thought dead by television critics. He did this as a Black American with an all-Black cast and showed mainstream network executives in white America that it was possible to be successful without showing the worst in people. He also demonstrated the power that television had, as it can make younger people dream to be the best that they can be. However, like many celebrity stars, unfortunately, they all come crashing down, sometimes by their own fault, others not so much. In this book, I attempted to highlight certain things. We go in depth into both of his trials in 2017 and 2018, respectively. What if I told you that these criminal trials were politically motivated by an overzealous district attorney? Will you also be shocked to learn that attacks on Mr. Cosby did not start in 2014, but also in the 90s, not long after his attempted quest to purchase a major network? From where did all of these allegations of sexual misconduct come from? Were the accusers telling the truth? In the 2 years of research, with some help from others interested in learning the truth and facts about this case, we discussed both the legal reasons why his prosecution and trial were illegal, unwarranted, and also the possible personal motives as to why this may have occurred. Most importantly, we warn about the dangers of prejudice and why trial by social media, or mainstream media rather, should never be the norm. All this and more in The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby Jr., The Destruction of Due Process in America. Available on Amazon this fall in Kindle and paperback format.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what's up, everybody? We are celebrating. Y'all can see me. What's up, everybody? Come on into the chat. All right, Danielle, shout out, Queen. I know I had said this was going to be a 12. I had to push the time back due to some commitments beyond my control. I see we have people on Facebook. We also have people here on YouTube that are watching. LA Kaiser, Nikki Ivory, thank you all for joining in, ladies. Thank you, Nikki Ivory. She said, congratulations. I appreciate it. Thank you, Danielle. Merci beaucoup. Yeah, this is available on Kindle. Ladies and gentlemen, for your reading pleasure. This has been a long 2.5 years to accomplish, but this is the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby Jr., the destruction of due process in the United States, the Kindle edition that's available now. Of course, if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can buy it, or I prefer if you all buy it right now. This is on Amazon, available right now, ladies and gentlemen. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby Jr., the destruction of due process in the United States. That's on Amazon. So we're celebrating the release of this book. I see some people. Thank you, Gino. I appreciate it. I want to first off, let's see, put the link in the chat. Sure. Not that. Excuse me. I appreciate all the love. Yeah. So I've put the link for the book in the chat. It's also available. I put the link on the Commonwealth Cos page, ladies and gentlemen. You can subscribe to that page to get more updates. I might do another edition of the book. Who knows? But subscribe to the Facebook page at Commonwealth Cos. I find it interesting, I guess, how fate works. I was supposed to actually release this book, as you heard from the trailer, back in the fall of 2021. I actually had gone on a tour a little bit in the local areas promoting the book here in New Orleans. I was on WBOK back in December with Sally Ann Roberts and the professor. I can't think of his name. His name escapes me now, but I was on WBOK. Shout out to them promoting this book. And I was actually going to have it released then, but I realized there were some errors that were in it that needed to be corrected. And I had to take those errors out along with proofreading everything, making sure it was okay. And I noticed even in my Kindle edition, I got one little tiny error that I should change, and I'll make a little addition to. But it's other than that, the book is fine and perfect the way it is. I think you all will like it. It makes for nice reading. You can probably, if you don't have nothing to do, finish it within a day, actually, or two. The Kindle version of it says it's 315 pages. The book is actually about roughly 257 pages. And just to give you a little brief rundown, I don't just talk about Dr. Cosby in the book. I give a history about due process in this country. How is it we came about the presumption of innocence in the United States? Where that comes from. That came from an old Supreme Court case back in the 19. I said 19. No, that's an old Supreme Court case that came about actually from the 1800s, and the name of the case was Coffin versus the United States, and the citation is 156 U.S. 432. And it was in that case, in that ruling, that the Supreme Court held the presumption of innocence. It says, quote, "It is the result of the proof, not the proof itself, whereas the presumption of innocence is one of the instruments of proof going to bring about the proof for which reasonable doubt arises. Thus one is a cause, the other an effect. To say that the one is equivalent of the other is therefore to say that legal evidence can be excluded from the jury, and that such exclusion may be cured by instructing them correctly in regard to the method by which they are required to reach their conclusion upon the proof actually before them, In other words, that the exclusion of an important element of proof can be justified by correctly instructing as to the proof admitted. The evolution of the principle of the presumption of innocence and its resultant, the doctrine of reasonable doubt, make more apparent the correctness of these views and indicate the necessity of enforcing the one in order that other may continue to exist. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, reasonable doubt is not synonymous with the presumption of innocence, but flows naturally from it. Now, looking here, looks like I'm not connected here as I'm reading this quote. Danielle asks, had Dr. Cosby read it before it was released? No. I didn't give, I will give a courtesy copy to Andrew, but they know that the book was coming out. The book, I didn't release it and give him his blessing because I didn't want anybody to think that and this is not an insult against Dr. Cosby or anything like that, but I didn't want anybody to think he was guiding the hands of this book and telling me what to write, read, and say, which is what people would do and try and challenge and say, oh, you just a mouthpiece for Cosby putting out this propaganda. No, I started this back in 2018. It's roughly, I want to say 2018, 2019. I started on this. I wanted to actually write this book, perhaps, and do a journey on it and it was a journey because of what I saw take place in that courthouse. That was a sham of a trial. It should never have happened, as I've always stated from the beginning. Most people know that Mr. Cosby, or people don't really know, I should say rather, that that case, he was railroaded. You know the circumstances, may know the facts of the case, but you don't know the circumstances that were going on within that courtroom. For instance, most people think they know that Bill Cosby got due process in that court. He did not. Obviously, his case was overturned by the Montgomery County, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. They said he should have never been tried because of the previous agreement that was entered in by the prosecutor at that time, District Attorney Bruce Castor. Well, Bruce Castor back in 05 and 04 had been in communication with Bill Cosby's lawyers. He's agreed that there would be no prosecution. He spoke to Bill Cosby's attorneys to that regard, and that was apparently, from all the evidence that I gathered, it was binding. He had actually sent a follow-up email, and that's in the book. We talk about that you should not prosecute this man because that email he sent to Risa Furman, who was the district attorney at the time back in 2015, he said it was still binding upon the office. And Bill Cosby's attorney was Wally Phillips. It was important, and it's important to bring all this up. Thank you, John Hancock, for the congratulations. Now, most people do not know the facts. When I say they know the facts, I mean in regards to Andrea Constand's side of the story and Bill Cosby being what they feel to be a dirty old man who got away with raping women for the last 50 plus years. But let's look at that and let's think realistically. From 1964-65, you're saying that the most popular black comedian at that time in the 1960s, Richard Pryor didn't blow up until 70s. Eddie Murphy, of course, didn't come out until the 80s. And at that time, even Red Fox, he was infamous because of the style of records he made. He hadn't even blown up. He didn't even do Sanford and Son in the 60s. He did it in the 70s when he was almost 50 years old. And you're saying that Bill Cosby, while working on I Spy, while doing his stand-up tours, making comedy albums, he finds the time to sexually assault multiple women, most of whom are white, and not one goes to the hospital, no police report, no drug report, no toxicology report to show what was in their system if he did give them the drug. I watched and happened to do, and I still owe you all a review of that mockumentary that W. Kamau Dumbbell did. And yeah, I said it right, on Bill Cosby, because it was a one-sided hit piece. And they actually had Christy Rooley. Now, I don't talk about her too much, and I don't talk about Christy Rooley in the book, but Christy Rooley is one of the first individuals. I think she's the oldest allegation that's Bill Cosby had. Most people don't know that her case was thrown out, or she actually withdrew her civil suit against Bill Cosby, because when she was interviewed by the Son of Man, who was the leader of the New Nation of Islam, he exposed a very crucial mistake that she made in her claims. For instance, she claimed she did maintain Bill Cosby never raped her, but said she got drugged at this she thought was a party. She goes with the friend. She didn't name who the friend was. She wakes up, finds herself naked, but then when she goes on the Son of Man, she says, "Oh, I wasn't naked." So they pointed out a discrepancy, and our brother Drew Hempkins, aka Drew Story, he exposed that fact on his program. He did a documentary on all the Cosby accusers. And by the way, the book has over 230 plus references, roughly. Everywhere you look, when you read it, there's a footnote. You can go and double check where the references are, where I got them from. You always come with your facts and your sources in case somebody will come against you. Gino Cuddy says, in my opinion, Dr. Cosby should sue the state and sue, I guess he says see, I think he means Sue Steele and O'Neill disbarred, or whatever the term is. There should be an investigation into both Steele and O'Neill leading to arrest. Absolutely should be an investigation. What would happen is that O'Neill is on the bench, so he would be disbarment means when you have an attorney disbarred from practicing law, and the judge should be removed from the bench. I believe he should be removed because, and this is another thing we point out, his wife, was actually a sexual assault counselor or therapist, if I believe. She actually, yeah, there was actually a petition by Tom Mesereau and Kathleen Bliss, who were Bill Cosby's attorneys in the second hearing, to have her removed, to have Judge O'Neill removed from the case because they felt he was biased. Deborah O'Neill is her name. And I actually happened to talk to Kathleen Bliss when we were doing before I, of course, released this book and was doing research on it. She said when they made that motion, he looked like he was starting to cry. When they argued that, when Tom brought that up, and the judge, angrily asked Tom, "Is this your pleading? Did you come up with this idea?" Tom was like, "Well, I'm the lead attorney, so it ultimately falls on me." And he went through a rambling about how this had nothing to do with his wife or anything like that, and he refused to remove himself from the case. The judge lost complete control of that trial. You had women protesting outside the court. Now, of course, yes, there's a freedom of speech issue. Yes, people can protest. Certainly, they have a First Amendment right to voice their opinions. However, it cannot disrupt the flow of justice from the courthouse. And freedom of speech, just like our Second Amendment, which gives us the right to bear arms, there are still regulations that they place on speech. It's called time, place, and manner. And for instance, if it's outside the courtroom and in lieu of the jury, the judge could have ordered, the loudspeakers, the people who are protesting, so many feet away from the courthouse. I don't believe that was done properly. They talked about Nicole talks about how she went at the trial and saw these cups from a coffee shop across the street, saying, "We believe survivors, we believe women." There's no telling whether or not all of this is going on in front of the jury, and the jury could see this. And Judge Joe Brown even talked about it. The judge losing control of that case. He let accusers talk to Bill Cosby on the stand, shouting outbursts. "Do you remember me, Mr. Cosby?" Is what one lady, I believe Shalana Lashes, who's another accuser. We talk about her in depth in the book as well. Saying those types of remarks, and Tom moving for a mistrial, the judge denying that. Allegedly, there's a juror, and it wasn't confirmed. He said, "We can all go home. He's guilty." The judge allowed him to stay on the bench. The juror, I believe, is juror number 12, who said he had no recollection of actually saying that, but he didn't deny saying it either. He just said, "I couldn't recall if I said that or not." You can actually don't need, when you talk about voir dire, and that's what happened in voir dire. Voir dire is the jury selection process that starts where you get to cross-examine every potential juror and ask questions. You can ask questions about the jurors from whether as to their prejudice, whether they can be fair and impartial. That's typically what a jury will do. What happens at a voir dire examination, and unfortunately, and during that time, they did not. I just showed you all the Amazon page, by the way. And the judge would not, he allowed him to stay on. And the judge, if he saw cause, a juror could be removed for cause. You don't need a peremptory challenge. Those are the challenges that an attorney likely has. They have about 6, if I'm not mistaken, that you can remove potential jurors. The judge also can remove a juror if they do something improper or if their prejudice is apparent and called into question. He did not do that. Reportedly, there were even during deliberations talks of a book deal. Stacey Brown had even talked about that in an article. I don't know if any of that could have been confirmed. Of course, if there was any type of outside communication with any of the jurors during deliberations, well, that's a crime in itself. It's called jury tampering. Absolutely, Danielle. And this hurts real victims because then, with Me Too, and I think Me Too in this era, and we'll talk about that because we explore that even in the book. The problem with Me Too is that it does away with the due process of people who are accused of doing something. You can support. I have no problem with supporting rape victims. If someone has been abused or raped or molested any kind, absolutely they need support. However, there still also can be another side. There's another side to that which says we have due process. We have equal protection under the law. And no matter how bad an accusation sounds, if you're accused of, it doesn't matter if you're accused of petty theft or you're accused of first-degree murder or terrorism or blowing up a puppy pound. Those are accusations and they have to be proven in a court of law. A court of public opinion doesn't decide and should not decide the outcome of a case. That's the situation that we had with Bill Cosby. We had him accused on Friday, tried on Saturday, and convicted on Sunday. we go into the accusers. We talk about Janice Dickinson, Beverly Johnson. Very interesting. Beverly Johnson and Janice Dickinson at one time had the same manager, Don Gibble. And Gibble gave an interview when those allegations had surfaced, and he called both of them liars. He said that was complete opposite of what she told me. She's like, we actually I had a sit down with Beverly Johnson. She told me she had nothing but positive things. She said Mrs. Cosby was even at the brunch. Well, Gino, you asked where Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson was. I've spoken with Andrew Wyatt before, and if you watch his interview with Boyce Watkins, when he talked about Al Sharpton, he said he's still waiting to get a call back from Al Sharpton because Al Sharpton used to call him often during everything that was going on. I said, "You all right? You all right? What y'all need?" Al Sharpton was supposed to call him back. He said, "I'm gonna give you a call back. I'm getting on a plane right now." Never called him. Hasn't spoken to him since. Nobody wanted to touch this because it was kryptonite to your career, which is why a lot of black celebrities turned on Bill Cosby. Your Jill Scotts, your Tom Joyner Morning Show. Bill Cosby, whenever Tom Joyner was in Philadelphia, he used to do something called the Sky Show. Now, many people don't remember or may not remember what the Sky Show was. But when Tom Joyner was on his radio show, he was always about helping our HBCUs. He would raise money for scholarships for black students to go to historically black colleges and universities. Well, when he was in Philadelphia, what name do you think he called to help him out raise the money? Who do you think he called? He called Bill Cosby. And Bill Cosby would do his show for nothing. And that's another thing we talk about too, the charitable stuff that the man did. Raising monies for now over 100, putting up $100 million for historically black colleges and universities. He and his wife Camille, giving directors an opportunity to make their film. Most people don't know this, but Dr. Cosby actually is responsible for just saving NBC from bankruptcy. He was also responsible for, in an indirect way, of resurrecting Hollywood. Give you when we talk about this, and I had to add this during my time I was putting my final edits on the book. In 1969, most people don't, and we talk about this, and you all can read about it. But if you've been watching the Godfather story that's on Paramount, they talk about how Hollywood, essentially during those times, the major studios were in financial disarray. They were in trouble because people were not going to the movies. There wasn't a general consensus to actually go see films at that time. And many of these studios were being bought out by big corporations. So, for instance, your Paramount Pictures was bought by Gulf and Western. Gulf and Western, of course, was run by a guy named Charlie Bluthorn, a Swedish. He was a German entrepreneur who bought that. Same thing with your Warner Brothers. Jack Warner I believe, had died. They were getting ready to sell Warner Brothers. A bunch of studios were going bankrupt. And in the 1970s, what they call blaxploitation actually resurrected and kept Hollywood in the green. And one of those movies happened to be Sweetback's Badass Song. Sweetback's Badass Song. Now, that movie, of course, was directed by legendary filmmaker, the late, great Melvin Van Peebles, the patriarch of the Van Peebles family, whose son is Mario Van Peebles, who did New Jack City, as well as Panther and a couple others. Well, in order to make Sweetback's Badass Song, most of the studios in Hollywood did not want to touch it. He had done a movie called Watermelon Man that was a hit. And so he wanted to do a movie about a black revolutionary named Sweetback. And Hollywood was not going to make it. He was having trouble getting money to actually make the film. And he was under contract with Columbia Pictures to do a 3-picture film, but the studios wouldn't finance it. And that same thing also happened to Spike Lee when he made Malcolm X. During the filming of Malcolm X, Warner Brothers, a lot of people don't know this, but a couple of things. Warner Brothers was actually hit with a lawsuit by one of the gentlemen who was, I believe, he was an advisor on the film. And on top of that, they pulled funding for Malcolm X. Well, Melvin Van Peebles had to finance this movie himself in order to fix it. And he shot it independently over 19 days, performing all of his stunts, doing reportedly some unsimulated sex scenes. He was the star in it, and even Lil Mario was in it as well. You know, there's a rumor that Melvin Van Peebles actually got the clap while filming the scene. But in order to finance the project, he got a loan from Bill Cosby, a $50,000 loan. It was also there that Earth, Wind, and Fire got their first commercial success, their first break in Hollywood. They actually composed the score for the film. And Melvin Van Peebles, how he financed the film, he released the soundtrack to generate publicity. And the film grossed over $15 million. And tied in back to Bill Cosby, Bill Cosby gave Melvin Van Peebles the loan to make the film. And as a result of that film being the success that it was, grossing, it's, going off of a budget of $150,000, and you gross not only 10 times that, you gross essentially 20 times that amount on a $150,000 budget. Well, the film was a success, and it's actually commercially did well. Critically, it did well. It's actually in the National Library of Congress for being culturally significant. And that was in part because of your Bill Cosby. He actually gave Melvin Van Peebles the money to finish that film. Yes, he had saved NBC from bankruptcy multiple times, even back in the 80s. And when he made The Cosby Show, and NBC was getting its ass kicked by Magnum PI and Dallas on CBS. ABC, I believe, had Dynasty, if I'm not mistaken, which was big back then. But CBS was really the number one network at that time up until The Cosby Show. And, the shows that they had on NBC, such as Cheers and Family Ties, which did debut before The Cosby Show, those were actually struggling in the ratings. Even Cheers, when it came on in 1983, was struggling at first. And what they did, essentially, when Brandon Turnerkoff gave Bill Cosby the green light to do his own show, when the show was a hit, and you have 40 or 50 million people watching your show, well, all of my other shows that are not doing that great, what if we put them on the lineup following Bill Cosby's show, The Cosby Show, and see how they do? Well, right after that, they put Night Court, Family Ties would come on after The Cosby Show, then Cheers, and then Night Court. Sometime years later, A Different World. The Cosby Show was the lead-in. It was the number one show for 5 straight years, from 1984 to 1989. That was 2 seasons. Those 5 seasons, it was number one. The only other show that rivaled that in terms of popularity and in terms of breaking that record was All in the Family. And I had a conversation, interesting, with Andrew Wyatt, where he told me that Norman Lear had actually made the remark that The Cosby Show was not a black family, was not a representation of black culture. Well, excuse me, Mr. White Man. Who told you could say, and I take Andrew at his word, I didn't hear him say this, but I believe he said it based off what Andrew told me, but who is he Who is he to say that it is not a representation of black culture? I remember when people were criticizing that show because they felt it wasn't a real black family or it wasn't good times. Everybody ain't got to be good times. It doesn't have to be good times. Who wants? I didn't live in the projects. All of us didn't live like Florida and James Evans. I didn't grow up in the projects. Both my mother and father graduated from college. They were educated people. They had degrees. For many people, this show was the first time anybody saw a black attorney, a black doctor. And he changed the image of that. And the name, Huxtable, which is not even, I don't know too many black people with that name. Now, could the show have had an episode? Now, you never saw this, but I never saw an episode where Theo got stopped by the police for being in the wrong neighborhood, or Vanessa was followed for shopping while black. I never saw anything like that. And he tried to avoid doing things like that because he wanted to show that black people can be and are humane. That our kids can like the same things you do. You know, when Dick Gregory, and I knew Dick Gregory was on a Tonight Show, he refused initially to go on the Tonight Show because Jack Parr, who was the host at that time, there was a color bar that Negroes couldn't sit on the couch. And at that time, Dick Gregory in the early 60s, he was actually the hottest stand-up in America. And you know, he refused. His salary could have shot up 10 times what he was making in nightclubs by going on a Tonight Show with Jack Parr. And he refused to do so because he didn't like how black people were being treated. And Jack Parr called Dick Gregory and asked him, why you don't want to come on my show? And Dick Gregory told him the reason. You don't let Negroes sit on the couch. And Jack Parr said, you can come and sit. And when Dick Gregory gets on stage and performs and kills, Jack Parr invites him and sits on the couch. Hey, Dick, what type of car do you drive? Well, a Lincoln, naturally. And everybody starts laughing because they saw, well, wait a minute. I drive a Lincoln too. You know, you're a colored guy, but you think no different than I think. You like the same stuff I do. Maybe what they say about them isn't wrong. It's all wrong, what I've learned. That's what Dick Gregory did. That's what Bill Cosby was trying to do. We talk about the cowardice in black media, all the people he helped. Most people don't know this, and we talk about this in the book. Here's another thing I brought up. I mentioned Beverly Johnson earlier. Beverly Johnson and Bill Cosby did a movie together in 1993 called The Media Man. They had different roles, and I don't think they interacted with each other. I don't know if they did on set. But I can tell you from the movie, looking at the final cut, they didn't have the same scenes together. She was a nurse in the hospital, and Bill Cosby was a homeless guy who didn't speak any lines. Bill Cosby worked that movie for scale just so that Robert Townsend could work the budget. He worked that for nothing. Bill Cosby's net worth is $500 million. He could have told Robert Townsend, I don't want shit to do with your movie. This is beneath me. But he understood the importance of what he was doing with that film. That was actually before Black Panther, as even before Blank Man. Those were my heroes. I grew up with black heroes, Blank Man and Media Man. I remember when my mom took me to see it. She wouldn't want me to. At that time, I think Media Man came out the same time as Jason Goes to Hell, and I wanted to see Jason Goes to Hell, but I was 7. My mom would not take me and my brothers and our friend to go see that. We had to see Media Man, and she made us see it like twice. But there was a message that he was sending. Well, Gina, what you say about Norman Lear, Till Death Do Us Part, Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin bought the rights to Till Death Do Us Part to make the American version of Sanford and Son, make the American version of All in the Family. Just like Sanford and Son is based off, excuse me. So what I was saying, I'm sorry. Somebody was texting me. Yeah, to help with the budget, he did Media Man. And Robert Townsend even directed Bill Cosby's final comedy special, 78, which you have never seen. It was done for Netflix and it was shot in San Francisco on Bill Cosby's birthday. And what happened is that Janice Dickinson, she had gone on Entertainment Tonight and made accusations against Bill Cosby. And when those accusations came out, Netflix decided, and that was at the time they started to make all of these allegations. They were doing a dry run. And I talk about that even in the book because our brother, shout out to Tariq Nasheed, father to be of Cornisha, Coco Nisha, as he calls her. I hope that ain't her name, but Coco Nisha. But shout out to him. I know they're on Baby Watch now, but I mentioned him in the book and his what he tweeted. But the brother talked about that in his book. Talked about that in his tweets and how it started even with Hannibal Buress. But Hannibal Buress was actually just, I believe, a designated fall guy. You notice he hadn't heard. We talked about him. You haven't heard anything from Hannibal Buress since he did that joke. He had been in. Remember, around 2014, I remember the first movie he did was Neighbors. Now you know who started that was Seth Rogen, and Seth Rogen and Judd Apatow have been doing movies together, have done TV shows together back in the late 90s. But, I remember Seth Rogen, he was in the 40-year-old version, which Judd Apatow directed. And then he did Knocked Up. And so Neighbors was a movie I believe Apatow had produced, and Seth Rogen did. They did Neighbors 2. He was doing once he made that joke back in 2014. And that had to have been a hell of a coincidence of whoever was recording that. According to what Andrew Wyatt said, this guy from the Philadelphia news article, from a Philadelphia magazine company, he stated that it was that Burris was paid money by Robert Hubert, who owned Philadelphia Magazine, and he said that Mr. Hubert and Bill Cosby don't get along. Mr. Hubert had some type of grudge against Bill Cosby. I talked briefly about Apatow, but what I think really it is, I think it was just a bunch of people who caught up in their, with these guys, they're caught up in their emotions. Hollywood thinks they know what they're doing is right, and they like to lecture the American people on what to do. And they are so out of touch with reality. It's just like with your Michael Moore, when I put that tweet up about him talking about you don't need a gun, have a dog. Well, a criminal can have a gun and you have a dog. Which thing you think is going to win, the gun or the dog? The criminal could shoot the dog, and then he's got 5 other shots he could put in you, your children, your wife, or whoever that's in your house, any member of your household. They want to lecture you on how you should feel. But and there was an article, and I did talk about it a little bit. It seemed like supposedly they were stating that Apatow was helping the Hannibal Buress craft that joke. Now, what I found interesting when that joke went viral, as I stated before, is how that person with that camera was able to record that particular joke right when Hannibal Buress said that, and he knew how to do it. How did he know how did he know Hannibal Buress was going to joke about Bill Cosby? Why was he recording at that precise moment? Because my understanding is Hannibal, he had tried that set multiple times. It bombed, or it didn't go off without it. Or if it either bombed or it just didn't go off, I should say, didn't go viral. Someone didn't say it, and then all of a sudden he does another show. Somebody's recording, and then pow, it's viral. No one ever stopped to think and wonder how that happened. Prince of Paraphernalia asks, can Mr. Cosby get his money back from Gloria Acelia? Well, about that, no. And here's the interesting thing. He hasn't paid any settlements out to anyone, to my knowledge, other than Andrea Constand. The settlements that a lot of people get this mixed up. When you're doing a settlement with someone, settlements, as I have done them before, are not admissions of guilt. People just settle cases because they don't want to be bothered with it. And we make sure when they sign disclosure forms, when they sign disclaimers, that there's a clause that put in there stating that this is not an admission of guilt. We also say that once you accept this resolves any and all issues. It's Andrea Constand who went viral and broke the terms of her agreement, not Bill Cosby. She she and her attorneys, and of course with the help of the media, because what they did, they tried to get that deposition unsealed, which they succeeded to do eventually by Judge Roberno. And Roberno did this over the 4th of July weekend, calling Bill Cosby a public moralist. He got reprimanded by the Court of Appeals, who stated he shouldn't have done that. The Court of Appeals said that, well, because he did that, we're not going to go ahead, and we can't obviously reverse what he's done because the genie is out of the bottle. In other words, once you put the toothpaste out of the tube, you can't put it back. Once it's on your toothbrush, that's it. So once they went viral and they got the deposition released and unsealed, and we have all of that, and it was viral. Now, what they released and showed in the deposition, what everybody was focusing on was a motion for sanctions that Dolores Triani, who was Andrea Constand's lawyer, had requested against Bill Cosby's attorneys because she claimed during the deposition that Bill Cosby's lawyers were making unwanted objections, and it was interrupting the deposition. And she put excerpts that went with it that were going to help, obviously, her case out, because that's what you do as a lawyer. If you're making a motion, especially for sanctions, you want to point exactly why you're making a motion for sanctions against this attorney and state that the objections were unruly. And you can typically, as an attorney, you object to form if you're doing a deposition. If, for instance, an attorney was violating an order the judge had set that was going to be between the clients. So, for instance, if she asked questions that were not part of the scope that the judge had set, then you file a motion then you obviously would object. Well, she felt it was unwarranted what he was doing. She filed and requested a motion for sanctions, and she put in the deposition the part where she was asking Bill Cosby about the Quaaludes. Did you give it to any women without their knowledge? And what everybody in the media was harping on, especially CNN, when it was released back in 2015, was the part where he admitted he had sex with women and gave them Quaaludes. And so they ran with it saying Bill Cosby admits to drugging women. Well, he didn't admit that exactly. What the call of the question was did you have a prescription for Quaaludes? He says, yes. Did you ever give it to any woman did you ever give it to women you were going to have sex with? Yes. Did you give it without their knowledge? And at that point, Bill Cosby lawyers objects. And they get in an argument back and forth. And people have to remember the deposition, Bill Cosby was deposed multiple times in this matter. It wasn't just one deposition. There were different dates and the same questions were asked. And so they ran with that one, but then Bill Cosby's team filed a response to the motion for sanctions, and they had their excerpts there of the same questions. And she asked him flat out, did you have Quaaludes in your possession? Yes. Did you have a prescription for them? Yes. Did you give it to women you were going to have sex with? Yes. Did you give it without their knowledge, and AKA without their consent? The answer was no. But the media ran with it and said, well, you still, like people say, well, why you still had them? Isn't it? Quaaludes, as some people have heard, and you know especially, the 70s was a drug culture. We can look at comedians like Richard Pryor, George Carlin. Richard Pryor used to have a soup bowl of cocaine in his house. I was listening to, when Richard Pryor died, Paul Mooney told a story of how he walks in the house and he sees Miles Davis is in Richard's home, has a wad of cocaine on his album. So his album had cocaine on it. Richard Pryor was upstairs in bed with Esther Phillips or something like that. And he's coming down to snort the cocaine. They get ready to party. And Paul Mooney picks up the album, knocks the cocaine off the album on the floor. And Paul was like, is this Miles' new album? And Miles and Richard are looking at Paul Mooney like he was going to kill him. He said, Paul Mooney, if looks could kill, I wouldn't be here. This was back in 2005 when that happened. When he told that story to Ed Gordon. The comedians that used to wear shirts like peyote, George Carlin doing cocaine. He talked about how he was so high on the set of Saturday Night Live. Whoopi Goldberg even talked about taking Quaaludes in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. That was the drug culture. They called them disco biscuits. But even with Quaaludes, it doesn't, my understanding, Quaaludes is not an item that can make you black out and go limp, like Andrea Constant was saying. And they were allowing this testimony to come into the court, which was another problem because the drug she was alleging was blue colored, Quaaludes were white. So why would that testimony even have to come in at the trial? It shouldn't have. But we go into a host of things talking about that. Gino said the ongoing Hutt trial looks going to be going in Dr. Cosby's favor. Hutt's friend said she played a video game that didn't even exist yet. Yeah, now, interesting enough, I didn't go into Miss Huff. She's the one that claims she was molested back in 1974. Now she changed it to 75 somehow. And, you know, we got to, when she was 15 or 16 years old, it seems to be going in his favor. And and I think it's going to go in his favor just because the nature of the accusations, the timing of it all, the fact that they have been caught in so many lies, it's not even funny. So many discrepancies in their story just hasn't made any sense. The the Playboy Mansion. Why are they just suing Bill Cosby, not suing Playboy? They didn't go to, that law that they have in California, the law where you repress stuff and you can come bring that back. That's dangerous. As of now, there aren't any pending cases. Most of them have already been thrown out. As we all join me now, I've been talking for hours celebrating the release of the book, The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby Jr., The Destruction of Due Process in the United States. It's a dangerous thing in America if someone can come back. And again, I'm not being harsh with any victim, anybody that's been assaulted. Yes, it's true. People can keep things to themselves and not say anything. But as a defense attorney, how can I prove or disprove if someone brings that thing up in court? If there's no evidence to support that person didn't go to the police, they didn't fill out a criminal complaint, the police officers, if they did go and investigate any allegations they had, they didn't find any probable cause in which to make an arrest. And that's just an accusation. I can't confirm that until we had something solid. Now, some people may not like that. They may think that's cruel and it's unfair to the quote unquote victim, but we got to be careful with who we call victims as well. What makes that person a victim? They are an accuser. They're a complaining witness, as we say in a legal term as defense attorneys. They are alleged victims at best. And with the settlements, let me say this: Bill Cosby's lawyer, it was his insurance companies that paid some of these settlements. Like when Janice Dickinson got a settlement with AIG, that was Bill Cosby's insurance company. He did not want them to settle that case, just like with Michael. When Michael Jackson was going through, and I think Monday or Tuesday was actually Monday was Michael Jackson's victory day because that celebrated the day of his acquittal on all of those child molestation accusations he had. I think he had 14 counts, 10 felonies, 3 misdemeanors, or 4 misdemeanors, whatever number. He was acquitted on all charges. And no, there are no. And what I was saying, no, but what I was saying was that the insurance company in the case Michael had in '93, that first one with Jordy Chandler, his father, Evan Chandler, who was a dentist, wanted to be a screenwriter. He actually co-wrote Robin Hood Men in Tights for Mel Brooks. He got $20 million out of Michael Jackson's insurance company, but it was the insurance company that settled Michael. And insurance companies are not like attorneys like me, where I have to get permission from a client if I choose to settle a case or if I choose to plead a case out. I have to get permission from the client, and those terms have to be understood. Insurance companies do not have to do that. So the insurance company made the decision that they wanted to just get this resolved, so that Michael could go ahead and perform. And Johnny Cochran and Michael Jackson were upset that they had done this because Michael wanted to prove his innocence and said, damn it, you're going to make me look guilty. Cosby, on the other hand, with Constant, he decided he was going to pay her $3.5 million. She became a multimillionaire. The district attorney, Bruce Castor, he felt at that time that was the only remedy he had to give her because, number one, he didn't find her credible, although he didn't find Bill Cosby credible either. He thought Bill Cosby had done something, but he didn't find it was enough to move forward. So he says, the only thing I'm going to do is make you a multi-millionaire. I could do is make you a multi-millionaire to make you whole. So he says no criminal charges are going to be filed against Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby had a subpoena to appear in a civil case. His lawyers asked the district attorney, is there going to be a criminal complaint where you're not going to come back and bite me in the ass for giving any type of testimony? He says no, and he relied on that. They used the deposition to go after the man. They used the depo to go after him. And as a result of that deposition, as it was incriminating, Bruce Castor runs for DA. He loses to Kevin Steele. Kevin Steele runs a campaign. If you elect me, I'm going to put Bill Cosby behind bars. He wins. He's successful. And he subsequently does that campaign and puts Bill Cosby in jail the day before the statute of limitations are set to expire in that trial. And he does so. Bill Cosby's arrested. At that time, he went to his arraignment with Monique Presley, who was his lawyer. She, of course, doesn't last long as fired. And I believe Brian McMonagle, I can't think of the other attorney's name. It escapes me right now. They tried the case the first time in 2017. It goes to a mistrial. The judge held the jurors, I believe, for well over 72 hours. It lasted for, at least when they deliberated, I believe it was in the 5th day. And the judge declared a mistrial. A lot of people don't know initially there was a vote to acquit unanimously. The judge ordered them to go back. He said, it's not soon quit. You didn't take your time. Many people, even me, think that the judge, of course, wanted a guilty verdict. You say you hope that the special gets a release. You know, I really don't know if he can come back from all of this, sadly. I know he's talked about going back on tour, going back to a comedy club. I can't see that happening with the environment that we're in because people still think no matter what he did it, just like with O.J. Simpson, you can be acquitted, but I'm gonna still say you did it. I have my feelings. This is what I believe. You did something. That stain is on you, even if you're acquitted. They say, well, it was a technicality. I don't need to have any proof. I don't need any evidence. I heard enough from when you gave that deposition and what you said here. I'm gonna hold it against you. I'm glad you brought that up, Gino. I actually talk about one of the examples I use in the book. We talk about Fatty Arbuckle and Dr. Samuel Shepard. They're actually, uh, if anybody knows who Fatty Arbuckle is, Fatty Arbuckle was a comedian in the early 1900s, just as popular as Buster Keaton as Charlie Chaplin. Well, maybe not as popular as Charlie because Charlie was the biggest superstar, I believe, at that time. But his films were nonetheless just as popular. He was making a lot of money. He had a party he went to in San Francisco one night in 1921 that was wild, and a prostitute ended up dying. And somehow or another, Fatty Arbuckle got charged with her homicide. It wasn't a murder charge, but I believe it was manslaughter. Two times the case ended in mistrial, and the third time he was acquitted fully by all of his jurors. It only took them 15 minutes to deliberate, and 10 minutes of that was dealt with them writing an apology letter to Fatty Arbuckle for what happened. And he kept that letter till the day he died. And while he was, of course, acquitted, his career was not the same. His wife had left him, lost his job. Many people in Hollywood didn't want to talk with him anymore. Uh, and sadly, when he was starting to make a comeback, he was directing films. He died of a massive heart attack, and his comeback was cut short. William Randolph Hearst, who was the founder of Hearst Communications, they've been in business for well over 120 something years or better, 130 plus years. His great grandson, I believe, still runs the company. He Arbuckle even confronted Hearst about it, saying, "Why you did all of this to me?" Because the way they had the report set up, it was sensationalized. And Hearst told him, he said, "Son, no offense, but I'm just trying to sell newspapers." And that's what was really going on with this thing. We had people that were not interested in the truth and facts. They were interested in making money. They were interested in selling sensationalism. Yeah, he had to use an alias, William Goodrich, in order to get work to support his wife and his family. But that's the gist of what we have here in this celebration, guys. Someone asked, could Bill Cosby sue the state? The only problem with suing the district attorney and the judge and getting money back is this: judges and prosecutors have immunity from what goes on in their courtroom generally. Even if they say something that's derogatory, even if they did something that's bad, they're generally given immunity from being sued in court. However, there are exceptions to that. And this doesn't constitute legal advice, but this is just my opinion as an attorney. The consequences for doing something like that would be you actually acted outside color of law. There was a court case that was based off of in federal court where this judge who went beyond the scope of his duties, making racial remarks about a defendant, doing things that just were beyond what it was just egregious. And as a result, uh, they sued and won. We talk about Dr. Sam Shepard. Dr. Sam Shepard is the person whom The Fugitive is said to have been based off, though the creators say it wasn't true. And he was accused of murdering his wife. And we find out later, of course, that wasn't the case. He didn't have adequate representation by counsel. But on top of that, the deck was stacked against him from the beginning because the media sensationalized the event. A judge was speaking to a reporter. The reporter was Dorothy Kilgallen. She was one of the biggest reporters in America at that time. And she wrote or told her allegedly that there's no doubt about it, he's guilty during the trial. Sound familiar? So I have a whole chapter dedicated to Fanny Arbuckle and Sam Shepard, but that's essentially what we discuss in the book. You know, this was a lot of hard work. I think Dr. Cosby should just retire, Gino. Move out of the country. You know, Dr. Cosby is 85 years old. He'll be 85 in July. So he's blind, and I'm not saying he can't enjoy life. I would enjoy all of my years that I have left with my wife and my children and my grandchildren. Uh, I would be, if I were him, setting up, if this was my advice to even Andrew Wyatt, to support new black media, because it was new black media like Nicole's View, Sean James, Harvey Superboy, myself, Tariq Nasheed, True Story News, a bunch of people who supported Bill Cosby. A shout out, I want to give a special shout out to Angela Bates, who wrote Bill Cosby is Innocent. She actually has a book on Amazon about Bill Cosby. Uh, that's a pretty good read, I believe, and y'all support her as well. I mean, some of the comedy clubs have already said they don't want him there, but Bill Cosby has enough money and following. If he wanted to, he could open up his own comedy club and perform or do a performance. I would do if he came back to comedy. I would do a black. Uh, I would do a tour on some of these HBCUs. Well, that's why we got to change the narrative, Lamiko. Of course, they're going to think that because that's what they listen to. Mainstream media. You have to forgive me. I was checking something out, but I'm about to get out of here in a second, y'all. But uh, yeah, I could see that happening. Of course, a lot of our sisters sadly will believe that. They've been blinded by, they have been bombarded with propaganda. And one thing you can always challenge them on if they say he's guilty, will show the proof. Where's the proof of all of this? You said he did something. Prove it. Is there disc DNA, rape kit, anything like that? These allegations go up to as far as I think 2008, and we know from some of them, Chloe Goins in particular, she was caught red-handed lying. There were flight records that showed Bill Cosby wasn't even at the Playboy Mansion when she said it happened. You know, in the DA's office in Los Angeles, Phil Garcetti, the district attorney, he looked at it and he dismissed it. He said, "I'm not doing nothing with this." But you guys, let me get out of here in a minute. But you go to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby Jr. Destruction of Due Process in the United States on Amazon. It is available now, ladies and gentlemen. Special shout out to all the people that helped me put this together, make this book possible. There's a special thanks for you all there, from Tariq Nasheed to uh, Drew Hempkins, Nicole from Nicole's View, Harvey Superboy, Tanisha Bay, I love you, mom and dad, a bunch of people. I thank you all. Andrew Wyatt, I thank you. Yeah, bunch of people. Ron Hurd, it's greatly appreciated. But yeah, y'all go to the link there. It's available now. This has been an awesome live stream. I'm coming on here Wednesday doing this with y'all. But you all, you be safe and be blessed. Check that out on Amazon. Go to the Facebook page at Commonwealth Cos for more book development. We'll probably put it on paperback soon. But all right. And y'all had no trouble hearing me. I had to come in the room up here and do it. I don't know what's going on with the microphone back there, if there was an issue, but y'all know my mic works fine. My stuff is working fine here. Shout out to Willie Lynch, the comedian who shared this video. All right, y'all. But please go to Amazon.com and pick up the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby Jr. Destruction and Due Process in the United States. Let me say this right quick. This, as I stated, took a long time to do. And of course, when Dr. Cosby was released from prison, from the Phoenix Correctional Facility, I had to redo the whole thing over and make sure the verbiage and stuff was correct. But yeah, I was making sure all of that was perfected. But you all, yeah, we're thankful. I'm thankful for your support in these last few months. Your patience has been appreciated. Uh, I'll one little correction I stated before in the Kindle version I had to make that I saw, and you might notice it, you may miss it, but I'm the only one that sees it because I'm a perfectionist. But I'm gonna go ahead and I might unpublish it and then republish it back. But you all, if you have Kindle, should be able to get the book and re-download it. But do that anyway. Uh, all right, guys. Well, let me get on out of here. I'm doing much better, as you can hear, so I'm doing better than what I was. But y'all be safe and be blessed. All right. Love y'all. Holla, shout out to Danielle, Lamiko, Computer Robots, Gino, Nicole, Prince of Paraphernalia, like Voltron. I saw him in here earlier. Uh, Danielle, Prince of Paraffin, a bunch of people, man. Vulcan. Thank y'all. Y'all enjoy, okay? Enjoy the rest of your day. Love y'all. Go to the link there.